And hello,
Oh,
everyone.
hello. This is a bit of a different introduction.
It most certainly is. Hey, how you doing, bud?
Good. How are you, my friend?
I am living the dream, doing all right.
Ooh, that's good. That's
I
good.
have a collection of alcoholic beverages beside me that I've been looking forward to for a week
Yep.
because, you know, cheat days,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
Halloween candy aside.
I mean, is it really a cheat if it's a holiday? No.
See, the trouble is that my toddler has the trick or treating prowess of a pro,
Mm.
and when Melissa's kids were like, "We're going home now, right?" Her kids are older than my kids. She was like, "No, no, more houses, more candy." Trouble is that dad eats that candy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean,
So,
you got to steal some candy because that's how that works.
yeah. Uh,
Awesome.
I see we have a one chat. How's life on your side, Riley?
Good.
How's the week been?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. Just getting kind of things organized. I redid my streaming setup a little bit. Got a couple of things done there. Work. We're starting to gear up for Christmas, so
Hmm,
yay!
I understand. Movember
Yeah,
is coming along nicely.
yeah. I'm decently happy with my mustache so far this year. I've never actually just grown a mustache, so
Mhm.
we'll see. This might be my new look going forward.
Imma
We'll
adjust
see.
some lights and try and cut down the sheer amount of glare off of my bald ass head. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Hey, yeah. Shave it all. Just shave it all.
You know, I do, and I like that. My missus
Hmm.
does not, specifically, the majority of
Oh,
the time, but
fair enough.
it is what it is.
Hey, that's fine. If you know what, you got to make the missus
There is
happy.
that. I do my best to make the missus happy. One of
Yeah.
the things that I'm just gonna run is, making sure our concurrent viewer list is up to date.
Oh, okay, that
So
makes
I've got
sense.
a doot 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 doot.
Oh yeah, I know there, bud. Oh, don't worry about it, bud. We're gonna get a pilsner maybe going here. Depends on what I roll now.
There is that. Uh, Bear with me a moment. There we go.
I really started leaning into my Albertan a little while ago when I got a trucker hat or two. Uh,
You know, I've never been one for a trucker hat.
no,
No,
no, I like them. I think they're great.
I'm a ball cap boy.
Yeah. Oh, forgive my crazy hair right now.
Yeah,
I've been going crazy today, but um, yeah, no, Snake Lake Brewing. Because I mean, hey, I got to represent my old company. So,
that's fair. I like it.
but we
Well,
got some beers to roll for, don't we?
we do indeed. So tonight we have a collection from I've got two local breweries, and
Okay.
where is I I want to say Moosehead is out of, is it Saskatchewan?
No, Moosehead, I believe, is out of the Maritimes.
Is it
Moosehead Brewing, Moosehead Beer.
Spruce Lake? Uh,
St. John's
cool. I like it.
is their headquarters,
Hmm,
but I mean, they're kind of an international company now because I believe they are owned from a company down in the States. But that's going to be a topic for beer stuff much later on. Um,
Unfortunately, the can just doesn't say, but I have a collection of beers, so why don't we get to some beer drinking?
sure. I have 6 beers here myself.
I have four for our.
Three for our second episode here. Yeah. So I brought 3 from Collective Arts. If I
Mhm,
roll one of those beers, I'm only having that beer because good Christ, they're big beers.
that's fair.
Then the other beers I have are from Last Best Dandy Brewing Company here in town, of course. All both of those. And then the last one I have is our 88 Brewing, which is also here in town.
I like it. All right,
Yeah.
I'm a do this for the ASMR.
3, 4, 5, 6.
Here comes a D4.
What'd you get?
That would be a 3.
All right, and I got
So
a D6,
mhm.
and I got a 4. 1, 2, 3.
So
Oh,
3 for me is the Julia by the Dandy Brewing Company.
oh, the Julia. Then that is their peach sour, correct?
Their peach cobbler sour ale.
Peach cobbler sour ale,
Yeah.
which I believe is a reoccurring seasonal beer they do. Really,
You
really,
know,
really nice one.
let me just pull it up and see.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then I will go through my beer here quickly. I've got Collective
yeah.
Arts Origin of Darkness series.
Ooh.
Collective Arts out of Ontario, good group of people out there. And this is their Origin of Darkness series, which there are 4 different beers part of that series. And this is the one I have been probably most excited to try. It is 10.8% port barrel aged imperial stout with Vidal ice
Oh,
wine.
here you go. On 3.
Yeah. Ooh, the Julia. Yep.
1, 2, 3. Oh yeah. That's
Ah,
that
there we go.
ASMR right there.
Oh, oh, that's boozy.
You could drink this every single goddamn day. Mm.
I'm pouring my beer for those at home that cannot see what's going on.
There is
Oh,
there is much to be said for pursuing your passion at any cost. A dandy always does. And no dandy lived this idea more than the legendary Julia Child. This beer is brewed to honor not only what she did, but who she was. So
oh,
Dandy may have gotten his name from a specific sort of um, classic octopus man story.
yes.
Oh, Dandy in the Underworld is
That's a terrific one.
probably
Uh,
top 10 beers for me for certain.
wow. I'm just gonna say wow on this one. That is sweet,
Mhm.
strong, very heavy on the umami, but it's got this really nice sweetness that just cuts that like really just thick flavor that normally comes from
Mhm.
stouts. Oh my.
I find the Julia. So uh, I'm a sour beer guy.
Yes.
I like dark stout beer. Like my general take is a simple one. If you can see through your beer, you're doing it wrong under normal circumstances.
Under
Sou-
normal circumstances, yes.
Sours are a good exception to this,
Yeah.
and the sourer the better. And there's a couple of good places in town that do a really like
Mm.
Dandy does one. I don't know if it's still on their menu. It was called the Jungle Bird.
Yeah, that was their dark sour.
It was amazing.
I don't know if they're doing that one anymore or not. I have seen it come back a few times.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a different sour. I've heard rumors of a certain brewery doing a dark sour, but I don't know just yet.
Hmm.
But I don't want to steal their thunder just in case. We have everybody in Calgary listening to this podcast.
What one can only hope.
Exactly. Yes.
So I, with beer well in hand, uh,
Hmm.
our intrepid adventurers. Um,
Sally forth into the next topic on hand.
so I figured tonight we could probably cover a little bit of the playtest.
Hmm. D
So
and D one. Yes, I
w-
know very
one
little.
one D&D,
One D&D. I'm sorry.
yeah, and how much Wizards of the Coast apparently hates the rogue.
Oh no.
So it's an interesting take because like rogues are a very middle of the road sort of class when it comes
Yes.
to damage and capabilities and things like that. Like it feels fun to be a rogue when you roll a bunch of dice and do a sneak attack every round. It's fun.
Yeah.
But when you're comparing like or if you're trying to do some optimization as a rogue, you're probably not doing the majority of damage.
Mhm.
compared to, your average paladin or your longbow wielding or crossbow wielding ranger or fighter kind of deal, right?
I don't know what you're talking about with paladins. I don't know, like, short battle round, I get to use all my smites in a row or something like that? I don't know
It's
what you're talking
it's
about.
called going nova or blowing your load, but
Mm,
that is what it is. Rogues had kind of a saving grace for them in 5th edition because the wording on sneak attack specifically says you can use sneak attack once per turn, not on your turn, once per turn. So
right.
you can do a sneak attack, or if you had a way to haste yourself, you could do a sneak attack, take your extra attack, and hold your action until the start of somebody else's turn and sneak attack again.
Mm,
And it was a really elegant way to kind of up your numbers and balance things out. Like, we were talking about this the other night on um, balancing classes and things,
yeah.
and how in Tasha's there are cleric classes, for instance, that are just a bad idea to have in the game. Not because the flavor is bad; they are very, very cool.
Oh, yeah, and I know that you when you made fun of my alchemist, I understand why.
Yeah,
Is because, yeah, they're not optimal. They're not great. They're not well made. I'm just gonna say
yeah,
it like that. They're not well made.
yeah.
There are issues with the way how they can deal their damage and the way they get their sources of damage and things like that. And let's be honest, an alchemical jug that just makes whatever liquid you want, cool. That's great for flavor.
Mayonnaise flavor. Um, so in the OneDND playtest,
Yeah.
the expert classes is where they started, and that's
Mhm.
basically grouping together the classes that get expertise. So you got your rogue,
Okay.
your bard, your ranger.
Okay, so that's what they mean by expertise.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Got it.
And
Got it.
then
Got it. Got
there's
it.
like, so they're the experts. You've got
Mhm.
the mages group, which is sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards.
Right.
The priest group, which is clerics, druids, and paladins. And then the warrior group, which is barbarians, fighters, and monks.
Okay.
And the reason that they divvied that out is, in the player's handbook where it's like, you have to be a sorcerer, or this item can only be attuned by a druid, or this item can only be attuned
Oh,
by a sorcerer.
so they can go, this item can only be attuned by experts.
That's exactly right. And that
Okay.
way, in the future, if they look at adding more classes, they don't like what they did with the artificer. They don't have to come back and say, um, plus the artificer. Don't forget about the artificer. They can just say in whatever new publication they do, the artificer is a expert group, right?
Right.
And it kind of fits. So the rogue, the rogue is has not seen a lot of changes in its power structure since 2014. And
Right.
even like we did all the playtest stuff for D&D Next, which was the playtest for 5th edition.
Right.
And the rogue in that wasn't terribly dissimilar from what actually ended up in the player's handbook.
Right.
And when Xanathars came out, we got a couple of really cool ones, but the arcane trickster still kind of like held the crown as the optimal, like, the optimization community is a weird sort of space because it shouldn't have to exist, because two play two people playing rogues at the same table, one should not be incredibly more powerful than another,
Right.
right? Like, I mean, you make choices for flavor and for uh, s-
Feats and everything
well,
like that.
the things that make storytelling thematic sense. Like
Mhm.
uh, David's Eldritch Knight Tonk. He took the metallic dragon, gift of the dragon feat. And he's like, because this seems like a really cool thing. It's not a good choice. It's that I want my robot fighting man to be able to Godzilla breath.
Yeah. And I mean,
And
how many times have you seen Dern use his breath?
it doesn't come up terribly often.
Doesn't come up terribly often because A, we're normally fighting single targets or things like that. And if we are fighting group targets, our DMs seem to be intelligent in the way how they spread everybody apart from
The bad guys
everything.
want to win. That's how that
The
works.
bad guys want to win.
Uh,
Yeah.
Um, well, and it's kind of nice because the dragon, or the kind of dragonborn that you are, you
Hmm.
can supplant one of your attacks with your breath, whereas the player's handbook version, you had no attacks, you just used your breath as an action.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
rogue,
Yes. Back to
in
back on topic.
the rogue in the player's handbook was reasonably solid and reasonably easy to get the most out of. Like it's a pretty straightforward class.
Yeah.
And when Tasha's came out, they gave you the soul knife, and the soul knife basically said all of the struggling that you've ever had with the rogue can just go away now because you can offhand with psychic damage blades from a distance or at close range and do a bunch of teleporty bullshit and yada yada yada. It is
Mhm.
when it came out, I was like, oh, we all play favorites. And like I know if I'm playing a ranger, it's probably going to be a Gloomstalker ranger.
Yes.
That's who Jules is. Jules is an old ranger that I made for Tomb of Annihilation.
Right.
Um,
And I mean, for example, like if I'm playing a warlock, I'm going to play Great Old One because I think that's just a
yeah,
fun flavor. But yeah, no, everybody has their favorite flavors and all that kind of stuff, and that makes sense.
yeah. When we were reading through the playtest for 1D, and again, this is just a playtest, so like I've already given
Things can change.
criticism and feedback and things like that, and some things I have to believe that this was included in here as a typo or an oversight
So
because hmm,
sorry. Is this first level sneak attack you're talking about?
yes,
Okay. So I'm just going to read this out just so then everybody can get context for what we're talking about here.
yeah,
First level sneak attack. Again, this is 1D&D.
yeah,
You know how to turn a subtle attack into a deadly one. Once on each of your turns, when you take the attack action, you can deal extra damage to one creature you hit with an attack roll if you are attacking with a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon, and if at least one of the following requirements are met.
which are the same as
Advantage.
what we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To determine the damage, roll a number of d6s equal to half your rogue level rounded up and add the dice together. Um, the
and
damage type is the same as the weapon.
yeah. So the important thing here is the second sentence in that. Once on each of your turns when you take the attack action, which means sneak attack, you can't hold your action. Wait
Mhm.
for the guy to come into range and then stab him for a sneak attack.
Yeah.
So th-
Okay.
all of a sudden you have mechanics getting in the way of feel, right?
Yep.
Like the whole point in a lot of these sort, you could call it a build, but like if I'm playing a rogue, one of those cinematic moments that I want is waiting for just the right moment to strike.
And that would be holding your action, and that makes sense to me
Yeah. The
because
other
yeah.
the other thing that this precludes is um the sentinel feat, for instance, in 5e is very good at you get opportunity attacks. Normally rogues don't want to be in close quarters combat, but a rogue
Yeah.
with sentinel can pull off an extra sneak attack almost every round if you're keen and if you have a good party makeup for it. So
Mhm.
one of the uh, good combinations for that is you have a rogue with sentinel, sneak attacks on their turn with a fighter, like in melee. If you have somebody that has dissonant whispers, like say you got a bard in the party or one of various subclasses, a warlock even, they cast dissonant whispers. The person runs away. Dissonant Whispers specifically says that it provokes attacks of opportunity. The rogue gets an extra sneak attack, and then they stay right there, and you can kind of lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
It's a really uh, it's no frills. It's not like ultra combo like shenanigans. 4 levels of this, 5 levels of that shenanigans. It's you took a feat and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And this here's the thing: rogues were I'm going to argue probably the best designed class in the player's handbook in
in the original
in the
5e handbook.
2014 handbook. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
like uh it's yeah, it's not pun, but it's a build. Um in in the original handbook, there were some hits and misses. Like the champion fighter is garbage and probably shouldn't exist. Like it,
What?
its abilities do nothing. The
Ah,
improved
yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong.
they do nothing. Um the ranger in the PHB was problematic, and they tried to fix it, and it was problematic, and then they revised it, and the revised ranger was pretty good, but they're like, but you can't use it anywhere because it's not real. So you couldn't use it in Adventures League or anything like that. So if you wanted to play that sort of archetype in official content, which for a lot of people, playing at your friendly local game store in Adventures League is how you go to play D&D because it's reliable.
Yeah,
There's people
no,
there.
and then you know what? That's fair. It's funny. Just small slide tangent. I actually never really got into the D&D league and stuff like that. Like I it was something I wish I kind of did when I was a bit younger, when I was playing Magic instead. But I mean,
Mhm.
hey, I was
You
playing
know,
Magic instead.
I did it a fair bit. Ran a bunch of games. They
Mhm.
transitioned into. I used Adventure League to find players for our community games
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
in Calgary we've got our Calgary Dungeons and Dragons group,
yeah.
and that's got about 1,500 to 2,000 people in it that are relatively active.
Which is pretty cool when you think
Yeah.
about it.
So we had community games set up at an old game shop that is unfortunately no longer here, called Revolution. And
Yep.
we'd get folks to come in, and we'd have two or three tables sometimes with all of us running the same module. So you could come in on a Saturday, and it didn't matter really which table you sat at. We were still kind of running and pacing at about the same rate.
Yeah.
And there were a few things um, like you know maybe the other table got a little bit farther ahead than you or something, so you had to suspend your disbelief a bit,
Yeah.
right? But that sort of thing worked out pretty well. And at the end of the day, like we we got a chance to play test a lot of the different classes
Mhm.
outside of a space. A little bit of homebrew, you know, uh, getting away from the Adventures League stuff allowed you to do that.
Well,
Try out different like game breaky combos.
I was about to say, it just with the players league things, like when you were DMing for them, did you actually have to like follow the story 100%?
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly. Okay. So
You're
what if somebody started to veer off?
so social contracts, right?
Mhm.
Um, if you're playing in Adventures League, there's a reasonable expectation. It's a social contract at the table that we only have like 2 hours to play or 3 hours to play or whatever.
Mhm.
This is the adventure that we're going to play tonight. And if you want to do something else, why did you come here to play this adventure? Right. So every season of Adventures League was we're playing through Avernus, we're playing through Horde of the Dragon Queen, we're playing through stuff.
Right.
And there was a bunch of extra modules and fluff that you could put into things on top of the published book, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Having access to that as a DM, I've got a big long folder of PDFs of stuff that they shared from Adventures League. So,
And that's actually kind of cool because like that sounds like that's the only place you can get it.
mhm.
That's
well, and
actually very neat.
they're a little sneaky. Wizards will have like every now and again release all of those things and free modules and stuff on their website. And a lot of people sleep on it because why would you go to the Dungeons and Dragons site every day to just check on stuff? But on our Discord, every time that there's a free module put up, I generally try and post about it. So,
I mean, that's
um,
fair.
but yeah, so the Rogue
Yeah.
through all of this stuff, the Rogue was well designed, well balanced. It was a very middle of the road. Like nobody was like, "Oh, you're playing a Rogue; those are banned at my table because they're too good." Nobody said that. people didn't understand how sneak attack worked. Mac is a good example of that.
I was about to say Mac had that one story about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he when he learned to play, the DM he was playing with didn't understand sneak attack. So, uh, because they weren't playing with the books where it's explicitly laid out in, the books,
The books.
um,
Yeah, exactly.
you take things for granted. That's one of the problems with, like, virtual tabletops and stuff,
Mhm.
or like D&D Beyond. It's a good resource, but it's a good resource for being able to facilitate you playing the game, but they're not the best resources for learning how to play the game.
No, and I would be you would be very correct on that because taking a look at it, I play another one, not like maybe once or twice a month. We try and get together and play,
Mhm.
and there has been some rules that I was just like, oh, that is very different than the way I've seen it run before, and things like that. But with the way how it runs on between D&D Beyond and Roll 20 and everything like that, it's been very interesting to kind of get that
Mhm.
concept.
We When Tasha's came out, Tasha's had a boatload of additional rules to it
Hmm.
for every single class. The Ranger most heavily got revised, something fierce, to the point
Yep.
where, like in Roll 20, if you
Yep.
roll up a Ranger, you just uncheck all of those first level abilities from the player's handbook because they're garbage, and you grab the Tasha's optional rules instead. And they are optional; you don't have to play with them,
Right.
but they make so much more thematic sense.
I I think that Tasha's, just speaking about that book in general, is probably one of the best D&D books in the probably the past 6 years.
Well,
At
and
least that's the way I feel about it.
Wizards has some bloat going on right now, and this happened a lot at the like in the 3.5 days,
Yes.
where you had a good core base, and then it was time to print books to make money.
Yeah.
And anytime that you start churning out content, to their credit, some of the content like Radiant Citadel is an amazing book full of
Mhm.
adventures that are they're like, we're not going to write these adventures. We're going to contract out creators from like all walks of life. We want Asian creators, we want Indian creators, we want like across a full spectrum of people and
Yeah.
like cultures and life stories. And the book reflects that, and it's really good. Like even just for the monsters that are based on really cool mythology and lore, it's great, you know.
Yeah.
And then you get Spelljammer, which is I'ma just say it, kind of a racist pile of garbage,
Yeah,
right?
no, you're not wrong. I've read part of it and I was just like, I had high hopes for
I
you.
I have I have the hardcovers back. They're still wrapped in the plastic, and
Do you want to try and exchange it?
I'll probably hang on to it for a while because I have it on Roll 20 as well, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I was really excited for that because I loved playing Spelljammer, and the you don't need the Spelljammer books to play a Spelljammer campaign. You don't. It's
No.
easy enough to just like dive into it. I wanted so the Rising from the Last War
Mhm.
Eberron book
Yes.
is an amazing lore book for Eberron. It If you had never read the Eberron campaign setting from 3.5, it was enough in that book for you to have a good connection with the world and the pulp fantasy and the kind of stories that they like Eberron was suited to.
Mhm.
And you could dive in and play. And I mean, if you got your hands on the campaign setting from 3.5, everything was just gravy at that point
Yeah.
because it has so much more. But it was a very complete campaign setting. Um, Same with Wildmount.
Yes. I never played a Wild Mount campaign. That sounded like an interesting one. Spelljammer always sounded like an interesting one. I played Dark Sun.
Yep.
Just speaking about campaigns, they haven't done a 5e Dark Sun yet, have they?
And they probably won't.
No?
No.
Hmm.
The tone of Dark Sun is a little grittier and more uh, complicated for the current group of. I I don't mean to like disparage 5e players by any stretch of the imagination, but 5e today, or sorry, D&D today is not the D&D it was say 20 years ago. Y- Violent cannibal halflings, we'll
Yeah,
say.
no,
Right?
it's you're very right about that. And yeah, no, I just remember playing in the Dark Sun campaign, and there was slavery, there was gladiatorial combat to the death,
Yep.
there was the like Dark Sun, like when the actual sun rose, like you couldn't be out at all or anything like there was so many different things about it.
It it caused a it would be problematic for Wizards of the Coast to push now. Um
Yeah.
I so Matt Colville had a live a couple of days ago
Hmm.
talking about what dungeons are for. Because the game is called Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Because back in the 70s and the 80s, you had an you didn't really have much for class abilities. You were a
No.
dude with a couple of hit points. You were basically an average dude.
Yes.
And the equipment list that's listed in the player's handbook that has like a rope and a 10-foot pole and a mirror and a light and things like that. And it's like, why is this in the 5e player's handbook? It's in the 5e player's handbook to appease players of first and second and third edition. Legit. Because beyond character creation, you don't really think about that kind of stuff that much. Do I need
No.
a small hand mirror to be able to look around corners? Why? Why wouldn't I just move my token around and then get into combat and fight the thing? And it's because 5e as a system doesn't reward that kind of play.
And that's fair. That's actually very fair. And you know what? It was funny. Just before this call, I was talking with a friend, and we were talking about Pathfinder compared to 5e,
Yeah.
and I brought up the bloat thing, and he was just like, "What do you mean by bloat?" I was just mean there is literally take 5e, the amount of books that are out for 5e. Take the previous Pathfinder edition.
Yeah.
There are so many books,
You
so many, like, just supplemental things. It's
yeah.
absolutely insane.
The for the folks listening to the podcast, you won't be able to see this, but I'm gesturing to a wall of books behind me. And it's mostly 5e that you can see, but what you can't see is all of the third edition stuff that is on the lowest shelf and takes up the most amount of space.
The 3.5 in the 3rd edition just actually it's actually his bookshelf.
Yeah,
It's actually just made out of the books from that bookshelf.
there is that. Yeah. Um, so like looping all the way back.
Yes.
When Tasha's came out,
Oh god, yes. Sorry, we were talking about
yeah,
just
tangents upon tangents.
da, da, da,
Um,
da, da.
the Ranger got a lot of things, and fighters got some cool shit,
Mhm, mhm.
and clerics they looked at clerics and said, "Fuck it," and threw a bunch of papers in the air and said, "Clerics are now more powerful than everybody else on the planet
Yes.
because the Peace Domain and Twilight Domain cleric together um, essentially makes your party functionally immortal."
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Again, I wanna play the Holy Boy squad and go in with 4 clerics.
It's something worth looking up. It's not a coffee lock. Well, the last time we talked about the coffee lock build.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This time we're going to talk about fuck it, we're clerics. And fuck it, we're clerics means that you have a tiefling in your party that has the
Yep.
infernal constitution feat, which means that they have
Yes.
resistance to fire, cold, and poison.
Yep.
And hopefully, somebody else in the party is a barbarian of the bear.
No, 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 we're only talking
No,
just
no, like
clerics here.
like, here's the thing. Um, so between those 2, you can do it without the tiefling, but, I mean, you get better coverage this way. You get a
Oh,
Twilight
yeah, yeah.
Domain cleric and a peace cleric, and, uh, you basically get a big healing shield that using
Mhm.
reactions, your players say, "Oh, it's fire damage. I'll take the fire damage. Oh, it's cold damage. He'll take the cold damage. Oh, it's something physical. The barbarian takes all that damage." And you get resistance to that damage, and the rest of it soaks into the bond of big temporary hit points. And then at the start of the next turn, that shield comes back again. So it functionally makes your DM need to roll like 80 to 100 damage a hit just to be able to touch you guys. And
Yeah.
after a while,
No,
that's not fun.
no, and it's I like the idea. It it's fun, but at the same time, you wanna have a cooperative
Yeah.
storytelling game. That is what D&D is in the end. However, I do love the idea of something like this, like something absolutely broken that is just like, "This is stupid. Why are you doing this to me?"
Well, and I like the idea of so that in a very narrow setting, that's the kind of thing that you throw your party against because it makes for one interesting encounter to touch base on. And they should be an elite squad of like teamwork commandos that know what the fuck they're doing and their teamwork is on point, and you need to figure out a way to overcome that, aka grabbing them and physically separating them away from each other and then
Yeah.
murdering them separately, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a thing. I often take like, oh, this is a really cool build. I'm gonna murder my players with this because I get to demonstrate the build, try it out, crunch some numbers. You guys get to experience something reasonably cool, and um, I feel like it makes the world feel bigger when you do that
Mhm.
because it's like, oh, there are people out there that are just more in line with the world than we are.
Right.
These guys didn't skip Lake Dayquil.
No, and it's just talking about the kind of funny things when it comes to builds and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, no, there are some very, very silly things you can do.
Yeah,
And it's just fun. But anyway, back to the topic of
rogues.
Rogue from one D&D.
Well,
Um
Rogue was so balanced that when Tasha's came out and everybody got a bunch of bullshit, you know what
yes.
Rogues got? They're good. They got a bonus action aim. They're like, here's the thing. You can already use your bonus action to hide to gain advantage on an attack. We're going to
Yep.
simplify that and say you can use a bonus action to aim, and then the next attack you make has advantage, but your speed goes to 0. So basically the exact same thing that they already had,
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
maybe slightly worse, because finding a place to hide behind, it wasn't hard before.
No.
But it enabled something a little weird, and I sent it to you the other day called the Double Phantom. I don't know if you've got a chance to look.
Yes, I didn't have a chance to watch it yet, but the Double
So
Phantom.
the Phantom Rogue in Tasha's um
Yeah.
basically lets you, like, when you kill something, you absorb its soul into a little object, and it lets you like
Mhm.
use a skill that you're not proficient with, as though you're like hearing whispers of the grave and things like that. Later on,
Right.
it lets you break one of those to do an extra half a sneak attack. So take your sneak
Hmm.
attack, roll half the dice, and you can add that damage to somebody else.
Hmm.
So using this little aim ability,
Mhm.
you show up into combat on a horse or a mount of some kind, because it doesn't matter if your speed is 0, because your horse's speed is whatever it needs to be. So
Right.
you ride around and you sneak attack with advantage on everything, every turn, with a heavy crossbow or whatever, and you kill something, and then you um, suck a thing in, and then you do extra damage when you successfully land a hit, and you kill more things, and you get more tokens, and kill
Mhm,
more things,
so
and get more tokens. And
sorry,
the
we're starting to
map,
sound like a miniatures game here, sorry.
well, you get more abilities back.
Mhm.
And yeah.
There was a game I played, Privateer Press's War Machine, and there was a
Mm.
couple of characters that could charge into a unit, get an attack. If they killed something, they got a soul token. And then they could spend that soul token to get an attack, and it was just like, "Do, do, 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 I'm going to pinball through this unit."
That's that's cleave in a nutshell,
Yeah, basically.
right? There's there's a reason things like Great Weapon Master in the PHP is it's a feat tax. I don't know if you've heard of the term.
I haven't heard the term feat tax.
So feat tax is specifically um, it's one of those things that is so good that you have to take it. You
Hmm.
kind of don't have a good option to not take it. So things like sharpshooter, if you're a ranged character of some kind, um, it behooves you to take sharpshooter because the value that you get out of it is so good. Great Weapon Master is the same. When you kill something, you get to make an extra attack as a bonus action. If you crit, you get to make an extra
Yeah,
attack as a bonus action, right?
yeah.
And -5 accuracy for +10 damage. Wham, 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 wham.
Just yeah, no, it's it, just seeing the kind of classic builds and stuff like that. Here's a question,
Yep.
actually. This is a question about just 5e in general.
Mhm.
Do you think that there are that many kind of creative ideas what you can do with a character compared to previous editions?
Not compared to previous editions. So,
So it do you feel like people are kind of railroading?
um, not so. All right, I'll preface this. Um,
Mm,
in 3.5, you could build a character that was a living wagon that just absorbed the life essence of the people that the wagon drove past, and then it used it to turn into a flying aerial attack fortress and murder
mhm.
things in other dimensions for skill points. This is bullshit. Like you look at Pun Pun sometime, where it's like, I'll be a kobold. That is a very specific prestige class that can turn into wish granting genie lizard people, and I'll make my strength and con and dex hundreds of points instead of an eight.
And we wonder why we couldn't get people into D&D in 3.5.
And fourth edition was the most mayonnaise of the editions. I'll say so. I don't have a lot of love for fourth edition because
You
they
know,
they
neither do
changed
I.
a lot of things. We played 3.5 and Pathfinder through most of it. Yeah, things like the Cancer Mage in 3.5 really there was a lot of like really
I don't know if I
inappropriate
wanna know
things.
about the I don't know if I wanna know about the
That's
cancer
that's
mage.
not a build name. That's something published in a book. Yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot. Fourth edition
Sorry,
had
just for the podcast people, my face was something between anger, disappointment, and sadness.
yeah. Fourth edition was designed to work with a virtual tabletop that at
Mhm.
the time Wizards was developing and then kind of shit the bed on. Well, it didn't pan out, but you
No.
can see it in the system and you can see it in the writing. Like the biggest detractor for me when I read the books and I sit down and I read them cover to cover because
Yeah.
that's a me thing. When I read Fireball and I see like a flowy description of how Fireball works,
Yes.
the picture in my head is of a dude casting Fireball, and here is how that works. Right? It is setting the scene for casting a spell.
Right.
When you read Fireball in the 4e handbook, it says range X number of squares, damage X number of this, and that's it. Deals fire damage. And it the gamification of it, and that I suppose that's the word of the day there for 4e was like the gamification. Because they built it to work on a virtual platform
Right.
because WoW was very popular at the time. You know, that was the
Mm.
thing. But I call it the most mayonnaise because it was the most balanced. Because everybody
And
from level 1 is a hero, and you've got good hit points, and here are your 7 abilities, and it's
yeah.
all you always have these things that you're gonna do. There's no room in 4th edition, or minimal room, for creative play, right?
Yeah, I would give you that. I would definitely give you that.
So, back in the day, call it AD&D, that's all you had was creative play. You're a dude. Here's the equipment that you could carry with you into a dungeon. Go nuts. You know why you have a 10-foot pole? So you can tap the floor and the ceiling in front of you to see if there are traps, because if you didn't do that, you died, and then the game is over. Because
Mm.
there was no, like, uh, "Let's take a long rest here and get back all of my smites." Like, you had 1 spell and a lantern. Go nuts.
And you know what? There's something to be said about D&D like that
Mhm.
nowadays. However, I do like the grandiose effect of what D&D has
You
become.
like the dragons part of Dungeons& and Dragons, not the dungeon
I like
part.
the dragons part. I don't mind dungeons. I don't mind the idea of a dungeon crawl, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I like the fantasticism or the
Fantas Fantasticism? The
fantasticism,
fantastical nature of Dungeons& and
the
Dragons.
fantastical nature. This 10.5 beer is starting to get to me.
That's fair. But, uh, that was just it. To your question, I think for
Mm,
5e, um, it depends on your so it's a very much your mileage may vary. If
yes.
if you want to build a damage build, and the thing that you wanna do is be the most, uh, like, prodigious fighter of the land,
Yeah.
it kind of behooves you to play a certain way and, like, take certain choices,
Right.
right? And that's where I was touching on with the feat tax sort of thing, where if you want to be an effective fighter,
Hmm.
you're probably wielding a great sword or a glaive, and you're taking great weapon master and polearm master, and you're going whamity 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 whamity, and
Yep.
you're doing what your class expects you to do in a party dynamic. If you're playing a cleric, there are certain spell choices that you probably want to take,
Yes.
to be able to, like, if you're the only cleric in a party and the only person with magic, and you didn't take a healing spell, people in the party might look at you a little funny. It doesn't mean you have to be the healer, but there are roles that you fill, and that's like your nucleity center.
Nuclear. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the rest of it is how you go about it, what you add to it, right?
Yeah. Like Dern, for example, I'm just going to use him because he's the current character I'm playing.
Mhm.
Is his dynamic is the fact that he has smite. He has access to extra damage if needed, or he has
I
the
can hit things
thing
really hard.
hard. And yeah, Dun does things very, very hard, hits people very hard, and all of a sudden there's a flash of light and there's extra damage.
Why? Because I decided to hit it harder.
Yes, and then the spare healing just
Yeah.
in
Like in
case.
a party dynamic, you've kind of got Dern locked down into what Dern's good at, right? Dern is there to take some hits so other people don't have to. Now,
Yes, very much
if you
so.
were gonna optimize Dern to be able to do that, you could do things like Sentinel.
Mhm.
Sentinel's a reasonable sort of feat for you, because if they run away, you get a bonus action attack, which you normally
Yep.
do anyway, which you can smite on.
Yes.
And if you hit them, their speed goes to 0 and they stay fighting you.
Yes, and that does make sense. However, just the way how we play and everything like that, we're definitely more for flavor than we are for exact combat.
Sure. Um, but it comes down to, like, what would Dern do? What what role is he trying to fulfill? Because the mechanics are just like a tool to guide the story. right?
Yeah, no, and you're very right about that. However, I'm going to say that Dern's goal is probably to mess up something somewhere somehow.
That's fair.
He gave his name to a goddamn fairy for goddamn sakes.
There is that.
Again, I know that's going to bite me in the ass at some point, and the worst part is, it wasn't even Dern that forgot. It was me who forgot not to give my name to a damn
Y-
fairy.
you know what occurs to me? I'm really glad that YouTube
Mm,
is recording this live because OBS isn't.
mhm.
Yeah,
Well, we get to find out how good the
we
quality of
certainly
the
do.
audio is from ripping the
That's going to
video.
be a thing. I didn't click a button.
No,
That's
no.
okay.
Shit
We have an
happens.
excellent connection running to YouTube, so it should be okay.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? It's funny. We were talking about the video jitters beforehand.
Hmm.
YouTube is showing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just video is just wanting to show us jittering to each other for
Oh,
some reason.
I haven't been looking at video for over an hour. I watch you through OBS, my friend.
Well, yes, but I don't have that option.
I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, the designing for the mechanics facilitate the story.
Mhm.
And I was very clear when we started doing the whole gaming online thing is
Yes.
your choices matter, both
Mhm.
from your choices as a as a character and your choices as a player. There
Yeah.
you can absolutely choose to blow a feat on the actor feat. And I say blow a feat because it's a trap. You're like, "Oh, but it
So
could be so good." It's it won't contribute to your life in any meaningful way.
so talking about blowing feet and stuff like that, I had a very
Starting an
silly
OnlyFans
idea.
for blowing feet.
Eh. Um, no, God damn it. So, one thing I was thinking of on the last level up
Mhm,
that we took, I was so tempted just to throw everything into not the trash, but into the side. And Dern was going to have like this realization and leave the
mhm.
bennies and become a bard. I had this whole idea of Dern becoming a bard and becoming a spoken word poet or something like that. Something very silly or different.
It is worth saying
Yeah.
that aside from Dern not being qualified to multiclass into a bard,
No, you need charisma, don't you?
you do.
I had Dern has the charisma.
He has it now.
Oh shit, you're right. It
Yep,
needs to be 16 charisma?
13.
No, he had that.
He had, I believe I thought you had an 11 before.
No, no, no. Charisma's
Oh, yeah,
is
you're at
his
a
highest
14 now.
stat.
I
Yeah,
got ruled. Second highest. You got a
second highest.
14.
Oh, right. I put it
Sorry,
into
third. Yeah,
con, right.
yeah.
But yeah, no,
So
I was gonna have a whole thing.
and that's okay. So, um, in the previous episode, there was that fella that was helping Dern heal, and
Mhm.
when we chopped off all of your limbs, it was the
Mm.
thing. The fellow with the
Mhm.
weird sword with all the holes in the hilt and the tubes and fluting for the crossguard.
It was a flute, wasn't it?
Dun 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 dun.
Of
So, um,
course.
Aeolus Cross is one of the womb um, NPCs that lives and operates out of Hemlig
Mm.
and comes back and forth, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a thing. Um, so Aeolus is a paladin bard.
Oh, so I
Specifically,
wasn't so far off. All right.
right now, 4 levels of paladin, 3 levels of College of Swords bard
Hmm.
for a couple of reasons. So he's a devotion paladin, College of Swords bard because charisma being the highest stat on him, right? Charisma and strength are the two big ones for him. Blade
Mhm.
flourish. When he attacks, he can use a defensive flourish and boost up his AC by d6. And he gets a number of dice equal to his charisma. So the more he does it, the better he gets. Slashing flourish, he can hit more than one creature as a paladin. That's you have a hard time with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Extra spell casting abilities, like if Dern could use healing word and things like that, be reasonably helpful. Shield, silvery barbs, that kind of thing.
So you're not against the idea of Dern becoming a slam poet?
No, do
That
do
means
what
I
you
have to learn slam poetry, but
want to do. There are good and bad jumping off points in your classes, though. So, like,
Mhm.
um, you don't jump off normally at fourth level.
No,
You want
and
extra attack,
yeah, which makes sense now. Now is actually a good point for Dern to um jump off then.
but uh, kind of because Dern's level 5 right now.
5, yeah.
Um, at level, I want to say, yeah, at 7, you get your aura of protection.
Mm,
And the whole point of you boosting your con with those other things
is to get the aura of
is to get the
protection
aura
up.
of protection. So, like,
And that makes more sense.
level 2 is a good jumping off point because it gets you your smite. Level 3
Yep.
is sometimes good because you get your oath and you can get an oath of like vengeance and things like that
Yeah.
and misty step and all that jazz. Um, After level 4 is a little harder because I mean you get your ASI or your feet, but you wouldn't do it after level 4 normally unless there was a story
Uh,
reason for it.
okay, well then look forward to level 8 for Dern. Because Dern is going to be picking up slam poetry at level 8.
Well, actually, so sorry, these aura of protection's level 6.
Level 7 will turn level early. Yes, let's do this.
What's the level 7 ability for the athletic paladin?
Oh god.
Do you
Oh,
recall
is
what
it
it is?
good? I don't recall what it is.
Oh, I promise you it's probably not very good.
No, I
It's
don't think.
your paladin aura that gives boosts everybody's saves,
Mhm.
also increases everybody's walking speed by 10 feet, as long as they're
Only their
within 10 feet
walking
of you.
speed. Wait, so
So you all have to like bundle up and go chunka chunka chunk chunk together to be faster. So characters like Quill have to slow down to be as fast as Dern. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? That might be a decent jumping off point after I get my aura of
Yeah.
protection.
Um Paladin's kind of a weird one because uh you can ride it all the way up, but those higher levels, like
Yes.
the digit levels of Paladin, are really thin. Like you Paladin's one of those weird ones where it's like you're almost better off multi-classing as rather than taking a
Yep.
lot of those higher level features, especially if you picked a subclass that has higher level features that are like you can do squats way better than you could before.
Well, I mean, and there's the other kind of question of like, do I take Dern that way or do I take him into a multi-classing
Yeah,
kind of a way? And by the time we get to level 10, that would be 4 levels into
yeah.
something else, and that would be getting their subclass because you can combine subclasses, can't you?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So by that point, that would be the point where Dern would be a completely sorcerer Dern.
You technically could be a sorcerer. You wouldn't be
I
very good
technically
at
could
casting magic because your charisma is fairly low for a primary caster.
for a primary
Um,
caster, but there are a lot of spells that are not necessarily cast at enemies.
yep. Well, and the other side of it is you use meta magic to do swing as a paladin,
Mhm.
smite, and then as a bonus action you cast a spell like a
Yes.
fireball.
Yeah. But yeah, no, there's that. There's also the warlock path, which is always fun
Yep.
because warlock opens up a whole bunch of story kind of things and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And also, I just like warlocks,
Yep. Bards.
bards.
Dern is a slam poet. Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
Dern is a slam poet.
I've got it. So Dern is
Okay.
a fitness guru, and at a certain point, he
Yes.
has to become the salesman for his fitness journey, and he starts becoming a
Yes.
fitness influencer.
Yes. 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 This makes sense. It's a bard, but it's not technically a singing bard or like a performance bard, but it's a bard who wants to sell you something.
It's interesting. The last bard I played was in one of Melissa's games, and he
Mhm,
he didn't have an instrument. He was an orator. He was a
mhm.
politician. He was
Yep.
the most sleazy, charismatic piece of shit. And it's like, oh, inspiring leader. I'm gonna give you a good pep talk and make you better, friend. Let's do this. Oh, hello, Bast. Riley's kitty.
My cat has decided to come by and say hello.
That's fair. Um, you know, I've thoroughly enjoyed the Julia with you.
Yes. And I have enjoyed the Origin of Darkness Cloudwater edition. Ooh,
I like it. We should call it a night, I think. We've had
I think we should.
a good solid hour. For the folks that are watching
Yeah.
live, um, if you like this kind of thing, you can find us on our YouTube channel. You know what? Not just for the people who are live, the people who are listening to the podcast as well. You can find us at Legends of
Yes.
Logomancy on YouTube. Um, I'm so happy to have creator handles now. If you want to make some recommendations for beers to try, leave them in the comments section of the video. Or if you want to just see what we actually look like when we're talking about this, it's on YouTube. You can find it.
Yeah, we're
Um,
both very beautiful people.
I mean, between the two of us, we make up a full beard.
Yeah, it's very true.
Riley's doing Movember, and
Yeah.
I shaved my mustache off to look a little more Amish. So
Yes, and you can follow. Obviously, like I said, we said our YouTube. Also, if you want to find out what kind of beers I'm drinking and what kind of reviews I give, etc., things like that, you can follow me on Untapped at Riley Drinks Beers.
mhm.
Beers with an S because apparently beer was taken. Um,
Let's be fair. You don't drink beer. You drink beers.
I drink beers. But yeah, follow us, and yeah, it would be great to hear from you guys, and rate the podcasts. I don't know how it works on any of the platforms.
Yeah,
So
it'll it'll be available where all fine podcasts are found.
Mhm.
And if you want to get a little bit more of the D&Ds, we stream Monday nights at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for our little Naylor campaign. We are 20. The next episode is going to be episode 25. So we've been at it for a little while. And
um,
yeah,
but if you want a nice little recap, episode 24 is a good place to start off, and it's where we're starting our podcast
that's
off
true.
for it. So
Hmm.
yeah, so thank you very much, everybody, and cheers.
Cheers, sir. Have a good night, everybody.
I'm not sculling that.
It caught the